Their loved ones make the ultimate sacrifice, but some military families are living in disgusting and even dangerous conditions. Good evening, I'm Leslie Foster. One of the things we try to do on the news at 11 is amplify voices in our community. And some military families are dealing with mold and dead rats and busted pipes, and that is unacceptable. Everyone should feel safe in their own homes. Tonight, our reporting reveals the people who oversee all this knew about the problems. Investigative reporter Laura Geller has been leading the way on this story. She has the next part of a WUSA 9 original series, Dangers at Home.
We shouldn't be here at all. When the Department of Defense enters into contracts with private housing companies to provide quality housing, that's what military members deserve.
We've shown you the pictures. This photo is from Joint Base Anacostia Bowling. This one is from Quantico. Example after example of conditions no one should have to live in, especially those who are making some of the biggest sacrifices for us.
You don't feel that you should worry about your health at home.
As Marine wife Heidi Starr looks at these photos and talks about her family's time living in privatized military housing on Quantico, the tears start to flow. Cleanup of a busted pipe in their home revealed a much larger issue.
That's when I first saw what was the alarming amount of black mold.
99% of military housing is now run by private companies, companies which have faced backlash. Military families became so fed up they went to Congress. They detailed dangerous and sickening conditions inside their base housing.
Without the diligence of military families raising their voices on behalf of others, we might still be uninformed about these troubling problems.
But here's the thing, those military families didn't need to speak out. Our investigation uncovered Congress, DOD, and the military service branches all already knew there were problems. This is a statement from the National Military Family Association. It was given to a U.S. House committee. The organization voiced concerns about the 50-year contracts given to private companies to run military housing. They asked, who provides oversight of housing management and maintenance? Who is the advocate for family members living in the housing? They warned Congress families could be caught in the middle of the private companies and the services, leaving them with the residual mess. That testimony was given on Capitol Hill, March 29th, 2001, almost 20 years ago. It wasn't only on Congress's radar. These are reports from the Department of Defense's own Inspector General. Between 2013 and 2016, it issued 6 reports on housing issues. This report from 2015 looked specifically at bases in our area. Inspectors noted hundreds of deficiencies. At Fort Belvoir, they reported deteriorated lead paint. On DC's Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, they said uncontrolled moisture was a potential source for future mold growth. In the bases they examined across the world, they saw thousands of problems and wrote, the pervasiveness of electrical system safety, fire protection, and environmental health and safety deficiencies was the most significant trend that we observed. The issue came back to Congress again just last year. Its own watchdog examined the finances of the privatized housing projects. It found DOD has not consistently looked into the ability to maintain the housing for the future. We come full circle with another statement from the National Military Family Association. This one in February. They reminded lawmakers of their earlier warnings, writing, "It saddens and angers us to have to say, we told you so." After almost 20 years, families are still looking for the answers. Maryland Congressman Anthony Brown sits on the House Armed Services Committee. He also served in the Army for 30 years.
Do you think these companies are going to be motivated by these congressional hearings, or do you think these contracts need another look?
I think the contracts need another look. I think Congress needs to continue its oversight.
Another hearing on Capitol Hill is expected in the coming weeks. In the meantime, we've learned military officials are meeting with company executives. They went over a new proposed Tenant Bill of Rights. Residents in base housing should get a look at it soon. They tell WUSA 9 they are hoping for accountability. That can be complicated when residents come and go every 2 to 3 years.
Well, what you? Yeah. Max, where's the tooth?
Back at the Star's new home on Bowling, Heidi is thinking about the future. She knows, like all military families do, another move is not far off.
Do we stay put as best we can, or do we look at moving somewhere else? I mean, and then risk the chance of another mold-riddled home.
A House Armed Services subcommittee just met to go over how it wants to spend billions of dollars for the nation's military. The first item on its press release, proposals to address problems with the management and oversight of military family housing. They include requirements about that Bill of Rights, hiring civilians to better staff housing offices, and developing tools to measure some of the hazards in these homes. Laura Geller, WUSA 9.
All right, look at these. You remember these photos of mushrooms growing in a bathroom in a house on MacDill? Or how about the mold on an attic door in the ceiling? We have been telling you about questionable living conditions on military bases, including MacDill Air Force right here in Tampa Bay. Today, the Air Force responded with some of what the families who've been affected were asking for: a tenant bill of rights. 10 News reporter Eric Glasser is taking a closer look at the effect that this could have on hundreds of families right here on our area and hundreds of thousands across the nation.
We also did a directed review of all.
On Friday, U.S. Air Force Secretary Heather Wilson got an earful from families living at MacDill Air Force Base about mold, rats, and other issues in their military housing.
They found 23 types of mold in our home at levels unfit for occupancy.
Today, less than a week later, Wilson joined representatives from various branches of the service, taking more heat, this time from senators on Capitol Hill.
I know you can fix this problem, but this has to be a top priority.
Part of that fix unveiled today, a tenant bill of rights, putting base commanders and housing operators on notice
what their responsibilities and obligations are.
A draft version lists about a dozen new rules ensuring safe living conditions, an on-base advocate, attentive property managers, and convenient methods to file complaints. Repairs should be made promptly. If not, rent could now be withheld. Disputes handled through mediation, privately, and without fear of reprisal. Of course, Tampa Bay is home to lots of military families, both active and retired. So ask folks at places like the American Legion here in Madeira Beach what they think about a tenant bill of rights, and they'll tell you it's long overdue.
They should definitely take care of the military. They've taken care of us all this time.
I mean, they go through enough when they're over in the battle zones and everything. They don't need to put up with dirt here, too.
The people who are living in there have the expectation of living in a safe, healthy environment.
The issues aren't just at MacDill. There have been similar problems reported at bases around the nation, across all branches of service. Most of the housing is owned or managed by private companies, who military leaders promise will now be held more accountable.
I want to make sure that the generations that come behind us can feel like every base is home and it's safe.
And this same tenant bill of rights could also be extended to individual members of the military, whether they live in barracks or in a house. Officials said those serving our country deserve clean, safe, and dependable living space.
Today, members of Congress are hearing from 2 Tampa women about mold issues at MacDill Air Force Base. 8 on your side's Jeff Patterson has been on this story from the beginning. He joins us live from the air base right now. Jeff.
Yeah, good evening, Jen. Several families here at MacDill Air Force Base say mold inside of base housing has created severe health problems for their families. Today, 2 women from Tampa traveled to Washington, D.C. to tell Congress their stories. This is video Amy Norquist sent us of her coughing baby. She told me earlier this week the coughs and other health problems were caused by mold inside her base home.
I'd like for no other families to experience what we've dealt with. I would like for children, no other children, to suffer the way that my kids have suffered.
Today, Norquist and Tracy Lenz are in Washington, D.C. for a Senate Armed Forces hearing on major concerns about base housing across the country.
Here is absolutely mold in what says was clean inside my house.
This is one of the videos Tracy Lenz took inside her home before health issues forced her family to move out.
We started realizing that it was not safe. We all felt ill effects. We all had sore throats and headaches.
Lynn spoke to me today from D.C. before going into the Senate hearing.
All three of our children have had ongoing issues.
She says a company was hired to rid the home of mold, but they didn't do the job.
If my ductwork had been cleaned, would it look like this?
Lynn says even after the company came to clean their home, the problems persisted. And that's part of the message she wants to deliver today to Congress.
We're making sure that nobody has to continue to suffer. It shouldn't be this way, and there's a lack of oversight.
I spoke to Congressman Gus Bilirakis on the phone earlier this week, and he assured me that he will be traveling here to MacDill next week to meet with the base commanding officer to find out what's being done about these mold problems and to make sure that things like this don't happen in the future. At MacDill Air Force Base, Jeff Patterson, News Channel 8.